Guys, Stephen King and r.l.stine are both fantastic storytellers, especially in the realm of the scare. But what happened when r.l.stine borrowed from Stephen King? What are you doing? What do you mean? I'm making a video about Stephen King and r.l.stine and how they're both great storytellers and amazing horror novelists. And two, why are you in the fridge?
Choose one. And I'm going to show you why you have to choose one by roasting your video before you even post it.
Okay, Joe, let me know in the comments what you think, who you think is scarier, who belongs in the freezer. And I'll let you know at the end of this video who wins the freezer contest. While both authors are known for their horror writing, they often approach it in different ways. Stephen King is best known as an adult horror novel writer and often features more complex characters and storylines. His works delve into deep themes such as human psyche and the consequences of past actions. On the other hand, r.l.stine's Goosebumps series is geared toward younger readers and often has more straightforward plot and less characterization. In fact, r.l.stine has said that when he writes, he doesn't dig deep. He just writes a story and it's all plot driven.
All right, so first of all, you're reading a script. I can tell you're reading a script. Even if you put some slideshow with some cheesy music over top of it, I can still tell you're reading a script. If you're gonna outline, you're gonna have to memorize your lines. Otherwise, you need to pants it. This is what I mean by choosing between Stephen King and r.l.stine.
All right, so I tried to outline, but I'm a pantser, so I outlined to a point and then I pants the rest of it. And because of this, Stine's stories often include these plot twists that act like cliffhangers and get the reader to read more and more and more. His goal is to get young readers reading books at a quick pace.
And r.l.stine outlines to the point where he knows everything that is happening in his book. You need to know everything that's happening in your movie if you are going to create a YouTube video that people want to watch.
Yeah, okay, so I didn't memorize the script I wrote, and I tried to read it, and I why are you being so mean to me?
If you're gonna pants it, that's fine. Stephen King is an amazing author, and he has written over 84 books and has 350 million sales, and he's a pantser, and you can do that too, but then pants it. You can't try to pants when you've outlined. It's not gonna work, and it's gonna just look like this.
Stephen King's goal is to tell a story that makes people think, that is more engaging and more to the taste and interest of a more literary audience, older, who doesn't need help in reading, just needs a good book to read.
Trying to appeal to a general audience, but you can't. You have to pick an audience. So are you going to write for a younger audience and do a more entertaining story, or are you going to write for an intellectual audience that needs to think deeply about what they're reading, like Stephen King does? You can't just write for everybody, because then it's bland and boring. Pick an audience, pick a side, pick something, make a choice. Oh my goodness, it is cold in here.
In terms of writing style, King is known for his descriptive, atmospheric prose. I remember this one time I decided I was going to read The Mist, and if you read The Mist, there is really not a lot of spoilers here because I only got as far as the tree falling, and when the tree fell, I was petrified of the fallen tree. I took the book and I stuck it in the freezer because I had recently seen Friends, and that was it. I never ever touched that book again. It is absolutely terrifying. I don't know why. I don't know how he makes it so scary, but it was so scary.
Now, see, this is another great opportunity for some good storytelling, but if the person hasn't seen Friends, then they're not going to know that Joey put a scary book in the freezer because the book couldn't get him. So the whole thing about putting The Mist in the freezer is just going to fall on deaf ears because they're not going to understand that at all. You need to explain your references and not assume that your audience knows. For that matter, why even use Friends as a reference anyway? Why not use Patrick, what's his name, when the secret fridge animals from It by Stephen King? Or why not use Egg Monsters from Mars from r.l.stine? Why do you need to go to a Friends reference? What is this, 1994?
Both authors have been hugely successful and have a long-lasting impact on me and likely you if you're still here in this video. And if you're still in this video and you find it interesting and you like Stephen King and r.l.stine, hit the like button. That lets me know that you like this video and I'll make more like it. And it also shares it to more people who might be interested in these two authors. Thank you very much. Alright, that was a decent call to action, but you probably should have moved it to about this point in the video, so I cut it from the end of your video and put it in the front, because if this is fun and this is a good video, then like it, because then more people will see it and they'll be able to judge for themselves whether or not they prefer r.l.stine or King and who wins this argument. One day, I was driving home from work. And we live out on this country road and you see dead animals all the time, but this particular dead animal looked remarkably like Annie. And I was so worried and I came home and I looked and I looked and I looked and I could not find Andy anywhere. Then Annie came along and I was like, okay, all right, here she is. But my husband had picked up on my concern and basically insinuated that Annie was now Church. And I could not get this thought out of my head. So for weeks, I was walking around terrified that my cat had come back from the dead and was now Church, like in Stephen King's Pet Sematary. All right, I see what you tried to do there. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. You're trying to tell the story of how you thought Annie was like Church for an entire week and you were scared of the cat. I get that. That makes sense. But if you haven't read Pet Sematary or seen the movies, there are two, then there's no way you could possibly know who Church is. Or the fact that Annie was actually named after Annie from Misery, which is another Stephen King book. Stephen King dreamed of a reimagined corpse walking up and down the road outside his house. With this as the inspiration for Pet Sematary. The character of Jude Crowdell in Pet Sematary is based on Stephen King's elderly neighbor who lived across the road from him. The backstory of Pet Sematary is based on two incidents in King's life. Living in a house in Orrington that bordered a major truck route that frequently claimed the lives of animals, and an experience where his son wandered onto the road and was nearly hit by a truck. As a writer myself, I feel like this would definitely inspire me to write such a book. King's real-life experience of burying his daughter's cat in the Pet Sematary and having a kind neighbor who helped him bury his dog inspired elements of the plot as well in Pet Sematary. Alright, I see what you did. You just used AI to create this cheesy slideshow, and it doesn't make any sense. It's completely random. The AI is a great tool. Check out this video here and see how to use it properly and use it to outline, but don't use it just to like randomly shoot out garbage. You need to actually have a brain in your head and use it to create good quality storytelling with images. The same way you create good quality storytelling with story. You cannot use AI randomly to do this. I'm just trying something new. I want to create a more interesting, dynamic video that it has more information in it, as opposed to the way I pantsed some of my other videos and I go off on tangents because, you know me, I'm like a total pantser. I feel like an outline is a good tool to use. And okay, so I used the AI video software in Filmora, but it was fun. I initially filed Pet Sematary in a drawer and had no intention of it ever being published. It wasn't until he really needed it to get published for business reasons, as in he needed a book, and he needed a book now, that it was published at all. He felt that he went too far with Pet Sematary. He was like, it was the scariest book he had written, and he just felt it was just too much. Pet Sematary was written in an empty room in Julio's store, where King was living in Orrington and working as writer-in-residence at the University of Maine. The novel is set in a fictional town based in Maine where King lives and is tied into the universe of King, which is one of my very favorite things about King, is how all the books tie together. It's remarkable. Eventually, Pet Sematary was adapted to film in 1989 by Mary Lambert and written by King himself. Seriously, what were you thinking of this music? I wouldn't be criticizing my slideshow work so much because your green screen on this video really sucks. I'm just saying. Let me know in the comments, have you ever read Pet Sematary by Stephen King? R.l.stine does say this is the scariest book ever written. And he admits to borrowing the premise of Pet Sematary for many of his own books. Not just one, lots of them. R.l.stine once said that he is a real Stephen King admirer, but he doesn't read any other horror aside from Stephen King. A reporter once called R.l.stine a training bra for Stephen King, which R.l.stine did not find particularly flattering, but I think it is a great analogy because if you like horror and you want to just dip your toes in, R.l.stine's a great place to start. But if you're looking for some deep intellectual boom in your brain, then you want to go to Stephen King. In April 2015, R.l.stine and Stephen King met for the very first time at the Edgar Awards. R.l.stine said in an interview with Entertainment Weekly in September of 2015, "I'd never met him before. For 30 years I've been telling people I'm Stephen King for kids, but I'd never met him. And then I finally did, and we had a nice talk. But he jokingly accused me of using every amusement park theme any writer could ever use. He accused me of using them all, and he's probably right." R.l.stine has been known as the Stephen King for children, specifically his Goosebumps series. Despite borrowing elements of Pet Sematary, I must say that R.l.stine has a very clear style that is different from Stephen King's and is very unique and popular in and of itself. Yeah, great. It's really interesting that Stephen King and R.l.stine met. That's really cool, and it's really cool. It's a great connection because Pet Sematary was obviously a huge inspiration for R.l.stine, despite the fact that he doesn't read horror. If you want, when we have a clean winner, yes, Stephen King is the scariest, and that actually totally tracks because he writes for adults, and I think he intends to scare, where I think R.l.stine's intention is to get people to read. So shouldn't surprise us too much, but it's still fun that we finally, and you were right, choose a side is fun. Awesome. Team Stephen King. Let me know in the comments which of Stephen King's books scared you the most. Outline like R.l.stine, check out this video here, but if you're ready to start writing and want to write like Stephen King, you'll go to this video here. Another great call to action. Can I get out of the freezer?